Good morning and welcome to Not the Shop. Have you ever wanted a motorcycle that's not very good that is also combined with a car that's not very good? Well, today might be your lucky day because this is the Carver, a bike combined with a car, and neither of them are very good. Now in this video, I'm going to be referencing my phone a lot because this is an extremely last-minute thing. This is at the end of a road trip that consisted of a trip to the Tail of the Dragon as well as the Hilton Head Concord Elegance with Tyler Hoover and friends. And on the way back, I thought I would stop here at the Lane Motor Museum. And huge thank you to Miles Through Time and Sean Mathis for getting a hold of the people here at the Lane Museum, and thank you to all of them for being so accommodating to let me in here on their closed day to film with this goofy three-wheeler, and also thank you to Jared of Questionable Garage for making this all happen. What we have here is a Carver. It is a three-wheeled motorcycle thing that we never got here in the US, and I'm not entirely sure that's a bad thing, but this is a very cool thing for multiple different reasons. Basically, it's an electric leaning motorcycle enclosed thing. I guess the idea is to make a motorcycle type footprint a little bit more accessible to people who don't want to deal with balancing, leaning, being as exposed, wearing a helmet like you would have to on a normal motorcycle. And what they've made here is actually a very nice execution of a very, very questionable idea. In the front of the Carver, we have wheels ×1 with a single hydraulic disc brake and a telescoping upside down fork suspension. And oh, look at that! There's a steering stabilizer up there. This looks to be a moped tire. Yeah, Kenda moped tire. In the back, things are a little more goofy. There's an entire subframe here that has suspension for up and down motion, but then the entire subframe is able to tilt independently of the vehicle, or rather the vehicle is able to tilt independently of it. Again, some absolutely minuscule Kendas, but these aren't motorcycle tires, these are normal car style tires. And these are attached to two hub motors with disc brakes, and then I'm not entirely sure what's in here. I think it's probably the battery. Around the back, we can a little more clearly see the suspension and brake arrangement, and we can see a fuel filler door which does not house fuel. Instead, you have a European-style retracting charge cable. All it needs is a little foot pedal for retraction, and this would just be like an old vacuum cleaner, which I absolutely love. And since I mentioned the battery and the electric motors, let's talk about the specs for a moment. I'm having to go off of Wikipedia because their website, for whatever reason, is not loading for me today. Now, whether that's because the internet isn't the greatest here in Nashville or because the company shut down, I'm not entirely sure. But apparently, this has a top speed of 45 kilometers an hour, which is not enough. But also, it's too much, and we'll get to that later. It gets there in about 8 seconds. The range on this is actually pretty dang decent for how small it is. They managed to pack 5.4 kilowatt hours of battery in this thing, which is good for 100 kilometers of range, which is about 99 kilometers further than I would personally want to ride it. Or drive it? Do you ride this or drive it? I'm not entirely sure. Charge times are pretty slow. It's about 5.2 hours to 100% and 4.2 hours to 80. I guess that's actually not bad for 5.4 kilowatt hours on what is effectively a built-in level 1 charger, so I'll give it some grace there. Also, according to the Wikipedia page, this was designed in Europe, but built in China, Taiwan, and South Korea. And they did a pretty good job. Fit and finish is actually pretty good. These panels, plastic all around, all seem fairly nicely made. The glass, nothing about this seems like a prototype or pre-production vehicle. This is a pretty well thought out, cohesive package. It's just, why? We are going to run and gun the rest of the exterior tour of this vehicle. As I said, this is all composite plastic of some sort. The front hood is very... The headlights are halogens, you've got some reflectors and motorcycle style turn signals here right next to the motorcycle style rear mirrors. Down on the bottom you have some frame sliders and another frame slider handle thing to protect if you go too far over. This one feels like it might have gotten some use. You've got some very Testarossa style fetching side strakes. That is your door handle. The side windows are removed because I'm told that it gets very hot in this vehicle very quickly, but they slot into holes here with some posts. They are glass, there's seals around the edges, and then they fasten with these knobs right here. Moving on to the rear, we have the canvas top that can actually be retracted back, so you can get sort of a half cabriolet effect going on. As I mentioned before, the large box that I feel is probably a battery, the hub motors, the brakes, the suspension, and in here is a rack and pinion setup, which they call their dynamic stability system. I would refer to it more as a dynamic instability system, but there you have it. We have a spoiler of dubious functionality. You can see some fastening straps for the soft top, a lockable something, I don't actually know what that is, and then some more panels and a Carver badge, which appears to be missing some parts, some more body panels, and that charge port that I pointed out earlier. Inside the Carver, things get a little more interesting. All right, well, I'm inside the Carver, and there's actually a decent amount of headroom in here in a fairly upright sitting position. I'm not entirely sure what you say. I don't feel like I'm trapped. It is very echoey in here, but also surprisingly well equipped. Looking out the front of the car, I keep calling this a car. Looking out the front of the vehicle, it is very car-like. You've got a motorcycle-style dashboard that has more or less everything you need. Looks like left and right turn signal, high beam, charging indicator, alert. I think that's for the parking brake because it's on odometer, speed, a temperature of something. I'm not sure if that is battery or what. And then a battery meter and a fuel meter. So a battery meter and a battery meter. Okay. Couple buttons. I'm not touching those. Four-way hazard flashers. Your shifter is some pretty off-the-shelf looking buttons over here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these are Mark II Ford Focus turn signal stocks, like the New Edge one from the early 2000s. But you get the usual accoutrement of light controls. And that is the turn signal noise. Okay, let's never do that again. Interestingly, you've got a full wiper. Doesn't work. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's a term that I cannot remember. Parallelogram, equal. Yeah, it's one of those. But what really surprised me was when I looked around the instrument binnacle. First of all, you've got quite a bit of storage in here for your phone with these little rubber mats in here, but also a couple of speakers and a couple of heaters, which look to be resistive heating elements with a ducted fan and some heat sinks. And it looks like you can turn them on and off independently. What do those feel like? Actually already warm, actually already hot, actually already very uncomfortable. So that probably gets it done in this tiny enclosed space. Obviously, as you saw, the steering wheel looks and feels like it's from a go-kart. Moving down, we've got an adjustment, which is not a latch or a lever, but it looks like you loosen this and then you can tilt the steering column that way. You've got a little bit more storage down here, and then all the way down, you've got a very exposed brake switch, and then you've got your brake and your throttle pedals, which look very off the shelf. And off to the right here is the handbrake. Very important, probably. There is no parking pole. You have to park this like it is a manual transmission car. Moving further back, you have the doors, which have some fairly substantial looking crash bars / grab bars in them, the knobs that I mentioned earlier for the side windows, and then a lock and a door handle. And that is all mirrored on both sides of the vehicle. So you can get in on one side and get out on the other, which is probably handy for some reasons that escape me right now. I guess it means you can pull up really close to something on either side and park this thing really wherever you want, which more cars need that sort of versatility. Getting out of the vehicle to show off, it's surprisingly comfortable and yet minimal seat. This is actually quite cushy. It is very mad at me because door is open. and then behind that seat, which I believe tilts forward. There it is. There's a lever. It slides. It slides all the way forward. Hey, that's a very Jake seating position, actually. And then you have access to an incredibly ill-advised back seat, which I shall now sit in. Graceful. Okay. This is nowhere near as bad as I expected it to be. You have more crash bars, exposed structure. There are some steel B-pillars going up to the main roll hoops, and that's about all you get back here. You get to stare at crash structure and the workings of the front seatbelt reel. And yeah, it feels like sitting in a theme park ride, and I'm sure riding in it is a lot like riding in a theme park ride, and probably scarier. In case you were wondering, there is no insulation in a Carver. You can just see the inside of the body panels and that crash structure that I mentioned, and the main hoop going up here to the ABC pillars. And oh, that's what that lock is for. You get a little bit of storage right behind the seat. I guess that's, yeah, that's a couple bags of groceries. Something I am noticing that is very, very European, or very German, even though this has nothing to do with Germany, there's not a single cup holder. Which is odd, because given this thing's self-righting nature, I actually think it would be pretty okay to have a drink or two in. I mean, carry one, not, you know, that'd make a bad situation worse. As I sit here, I'm realizing back passengers do not get much agency in life. Amber, would you mind letting me out of the vehicle? Oh, I can move the seat, though. Okay, good way to mess with the driver. Just move their seat. There are some interior body panels, though, to flesh out the door and the sort of seat track floor area, but for carpet, you just get what I'm pretty sure is an IKEA bath mat. Yeah, that's just a bath mat. Honestly, shocking amount of rear seat space here. It's not terribly obvious from most angles, but there's some pretty aggressive cutouts in the seat here that are pretty perfect for foot and knee space, so that was actually fairly well thought out. Also interesting that I just noticed, underneath the rear seat, there is a lot of unplugged electronics. We have a Molex connector, and that is, I mean, a lot of the times when I see this, it's for Hall effect sensors. I don't think that's what it's for in this case, but there it is. And then looks like parking brake cables. And you can see right out of the vehicle out to the rear. You would not want to take this down any kind of dirt road or anything. You would never get it clean again. So that's the Carver inside and out, but the one thing left is what I've been alluding to this whole time, and that is the way that it drives. Now, when you hear about its top speed, it's pretty obvious why this wasn't sold here. It is simply too slow to use on public roads. Furthermore, it is impossible for other people to see. This sort of neutral blue color just kind of blends into the roads. It's a very curious choice, but there's absolutely no chance that I would ever want to drive this on public roads here in the US, but the parking lot of the Lane Motor Museum will be just fine for me. Okay. Oh, the seat just goes all the way forward when you slide it. Okay, there we go. All right. Driving the Carver. To start off, obviously, got to start it. Uses a key, just like any car, and then we get self-test. You hear a click from the contactor, and then everything lights up and we're good to go. Obviously, the parking brake is on, so I'm gonna push the brake and release the parking brake. Parking brake light off, still holding the brake, we're gonna hit drive, hear another click, and away we go. I don't know what C means, but apparently C122. And then we're off. And as we drive, and I steer, it tilts. When I steer the other way, it tilts the other way. And it's probably very hard to see on this camera, and I don't know if you can hear it, but there is a servo in the rear. Now, I'm told by the employees of the lane that this thing is mostly self-tilting, and the servo in the back is pretty much just used to bring it back to an upright position as an assist. I'm not exactly sure what the control methodology is, but as you drive, it does tilt around. And I would normally follow that up with the phrase like a motorcycle, but it doesn't tilt like a motorcycle. Driving this is extremely weird. It's like riding a motorcycle with a video game controller that has lag. It doesn't feel natural. It's not like a car, but it's also not like a motorcycle. It's really abrupt sometimes as it tilts, and I can't lean. I want to lean with it. I want to shift my body weight and I influence the vehicle like I do on a motorcycle, and I can't do any of that. Now, maybe that's just my bias as someone who's used to motorcycles, but either way, it's incredibly disconcerting. Okay, so the top speed is 30-something kilometers an hour, I think. Brief acceleration run. Obviously, the gauge cluster is all in metric. There we go. Well, that's brisk. It's not fast, but you know, you're not going to be a complete roadblock on European roads. I kind of wish we had a second one so we could see how many we could fit in one parking spot. I think you could get 3 in there if you really tried. 2 facing one direction, then stick another one in between them. Now, obviously, that last guy is going to be hosed to get back out, so that could be a problem. But this would make an interesting rideshare style, like short-term rental application. But since we've got 2 people here, we've got to try and fit 2 people into the Carver. So you're up. This is the real luxury experience. Your ride, madame. So yeah, lift up on that and slide it all the way forward.
Let me just squish myself back here.
All right. Is that comfortable amount of space?
Yeah.
That an uncomfortable amount of space now?
Actually, it's not bad.
Yeah, you kind of squeeze the front seat with your legs. Let's see how I am in front of that. Oh yeah. I could honestly go up a little further. All right, how are we doing?
Doing well.
Okay. Interesting. I've noticed that when you're leaning, it limits your speed. You cannot lean and turn too fast. Now, I have leaned it enough that it has gotten upset with me and given an alarm, but here we go. You doing all right back there?
No.
What do we have go on here?
If you don't hold yourself in a good position, you hit your head against the glass.
Oh. Okay.
So trying to hold a camera and like having one hand right here, my head was like.
So that is the Carver. A weird 3-wheeled leaning motorcycle thing that you can buy if you live in Europe. And from the US, we can only sit and wonder at the possibilities of dozens of these little tadpole 3-wheelers running around bumping into things and falling over. Again, huge thanks to the Lane Motor Museum for accommodating me and letting me take their Carver out for a spin and do this video on it. They have a huge selection of some amazing vehicles, stuff that you won't find anywhere else. Definitely worth coming and checking them out. And as always, huge thanks to you guys for watching. Now I think I am gonna go get some Culvers in the Carver. That pun was terrible.